And David, with this, I will hand the floor to you.
Okay, thanks, Sam. So, the title of my presentation is Are you still using the MNIST dataset to compare algorithms? And as Jan mentioned, this is more a little bit of the discussion on how do you compare different algorithms, machine learning tools, and essentially this is a benchmarking question. And benchmarking is used when you want to choose between different tools, and I hope that you will choose the one that performs better for your task between different tools that you are benchmarking. And benchmarking is essentially a laboratory experiment where you are comparing tools, algorithms, whatever it is, in the same environment. So you need to control a lot of things. And when we start talking about benchmarking in software, machine learning algorithms, things can get complex. For example, there is this paper here and they describe different levels that you should think about when you are comparing machine learning algorithms. It can go from the hardware, operating system, mathematical libraries, compiler, format, the framework that you're using, the machine learning model, and of course you're applying that to a specific data set that is in a machine learning application. And while some configurations are more deterministic, for example, the target hardware, you will see less variation if you apply the same algorithm again on the same hardware or on the same compiler, on the same libraries, but it's less deterministic when you apply on data sets. For example, if you choose different seeds, we're dividing between training and evaluation, you already get different results. And choice of different data sets will lead to different results even if you're talking about the same machine learning application. And you cannot generalize results from one data set to another data set because there are also uncertainties on the choice of data set they use to evaluate different machine learning algorithms. And as we will discuss next, some data sets are better to compare algorithms than others. And to motivate a little bit this, we will make a slight detour on machine learning and talk about a little bit on education. Schools and governments and companies have been benchmarking students for maybe almost 100 years. And this includes both school exams, SAT, TOEFL, and then national approved, IQ tests, even from those Corn Ferry, those kind of more personality assessments and so on. All of those are a form of benchmarking students, because in the end you want to compare which student has a higher ability, performs better, knows better English, or whatever you are trying to assess. And so suppose you want to compare which students are better at programming problems, and you want to measure their ability to solve a problem, you're probably applying a test to them. And this test has many questions. And in the end, you will see which ones answered more, answer better, to try to assess which one of them are better, because maybe you are giving the position to him or they are going to university based on those tests. And if the test is good, you can differentiate the ability of different students. So if the test is too hard, all of the students will fail and you'll not be able to differentiate these students. If the test is too easy, everyone gets everything right, and you'll not be able to differentiate the students. So the choice of the test and the kind of questions are really necessary so you can actually tell apart which student has a better mathematical ability, programming ability. And going back a little bit to our problem, we can think about benchmarking of software as kind of this exam education problem. And in this case, we compare students as machine learning algorithms. So you have students, and students go over a test. You have machine learning algorithms, and you apply those machine learning algorithms on datasets. And in the end, you measure from the test, the ability of the students, and from the data sets, the ability of the machine learning algorithm, so you can actually select the best one. And if the collection of data sets is good, you will be able to differentiate the algorithms. And the same thing, if the data sets are too hard or too easy, you will not be able to differentiate. And education research has actually been quite active in the past 100 years to develop tools and ways to assess that. And one of them, that it's the one that we are using in this presentation, is what is called item response theory. And item response theory is a collection of statistical models that you can use to evaluate how well a question, an item of your test, that is a data set, and how a collection of items or questions can assess the ability of the test taker. And here I'm saying like the students or the algorithms or the test takers, the item or a data set are the questions of the exam, and the collection of items, data sets, those are the actual exam. And with item response theory, we can determine three parameters. One is the difficulty of the item, the discrimination of the item, and the actual ability of the test taker. And this kind of answers like both the question, is your item a good item or not? And what is the ability of your test taker? And that is the essential benchmarking question. So just a brief overview here. If you think about an item that it's either you solve or not, of course you can have very different, but I think solving or not solving an item is the simplest case. You have different probabilities of solving an item. So for example, let's take this question, the red question, would be an easy question. If the student has a very high ability, 2.5, his probability of solving this item is 100%. He will solve this item. If the student has an ability of -5, that is, the question is too hard for the student, he will probably not be able to solve this question. And if it's sort of about, if he has an ability of -3, he will have 50% of chance to solving the item or not. Of course, the harder the item is, for example, the green curve here is the hardest item, you will need students with a higher ability to be able to actually solve the problem. And this is the difficulty parameter in item response theory. And very similar, you have the item correct, and you can also have discrimination. So this is for the same, this curve here, all of them have the same difficulty, that is 0. But some items, for example, if they have a low discrimination, you need a lot of difference between the ability of the test taker, the students, so you can actually increase the probability of solving. While in items that have a very high discrimination factor, a small change in ability, for example, from -1 to 1, will be enough for a student or a test taker to be able to solve the problem and not solving a problem. So those are the two main things that we're looking in item response theory, is how well this item, how well the difficulty of the item matches the students. So ideally the difficulty should be the same of the students, and how well an item is able to discriminate students. That is, a small change in the student's ability will reflect on different probabilities of solving an item. So this is sort of like the very basic idea that we are looking when we're analyzing, and we can apply that to algorithms for semi-supervised learning for automatic labeling. So in this case, we apply this statistical model to 12 different data sets, and I think it was six different algorithms, and we assessed how well the difficulty of the algorithm, of the data set, and the discrimination. And in this case here, we can see that this is easiness. So higher here, more easy, lower, more difficult the item is, the data set. So we can see that for this collection of very common data sets like wine, Reuters, Iris, MNIST, fashion MNIST, for these semi-supervised learning algorithms, the difficulty level of these items is very low. So all of the items are very easy for these algorithms. And because they are very easy, most of them have very low discrimination. That is, you're applying a very easy question to very skilled students. And if you look at those, most of those algorithms, they are actually not suitable for evaluating semi-supervised learning algorithms, at least those semi-supervised learning algorithms. So if you look at their ability level, they are always around 1. All of the algorithms are sort of around 1. Some of them are around 0.5. And most of the items here, they are very easy. So since those choices of items are not very good because they are very easy and they have very low discrimination, we have a lot of overlapping intervals, like these are credible intervals, so it's the probability of the ability level. So most of the algorithms, they're kind of like, you cannot differentiate them very well. And this means that for at least those algorithms here, it barely matters the choice of algorithm if you're applying to those data sets. Of course, we use these for data sets for semi-supervised learning algorithms, but we can also do that for optimization algorithms. And we're talking about black box optimization algorithms. And the scipy library contains lots of them. For example, from Neldermed, differential evolution, and so on. And we apply them to a very well-known benchmark, this BBOP. And we are trying to assess like the ability level of those algorithms compared to the difficulty level of the benchmarks. And here we can see that like most algorithms are around, the best ones are around the ability of 0. And the difficulty level of most here are around 2, 3. And this leads to a very imbalance between the choice of the algorithm. Here in this case, in the previous case, we're having very easy data sets for the algorithms. And here we have very hard questions for our optimization algorithms. And this essentially makes it very difficult to compare those algorithms. If you look then here, like those here, they are kind of almost in the same level. They have almost the same ability, so it doesn't change much compared to this one that is a little bit better, because this one is a little bit closer to the difficulty level of those here. So a few key takeaways of this is the results of benchmarks, and that is, if one tool is better than the other, it depends on the questions that you ask. That is, this data sets that you select or the benchmark functions that you select. And if the questions are too easy or too difficult, we cannot differentiate the tools, the algorithms, the models. Education research provides a way to assess the quality of the benchmark, the difficulty level, and the discrimination level of the data sets, for example. And this means that do not trust blindly the results of an algorithm comparison that you see in Medium or in a paper, just because they use common data sets. For example, the MNIST data set is too easy and has a very low discrimination factor for semi-supervised learning algorithms. And if you see a comparison that one achieves 94% and the other achieves 95%, there is no really difference between those algorithms because it's a too easy algorithm, and these differences might not be statistically significant. So even if a benchmark presents a difference in the performance, they might have little impact on the actual ability of the tool, and that is an ability that can be transferred to other applications. Think about it more as how well you're, think of ability as kind of a generalization of your tool. If it performs well on a set of data sets, and those data sets are not very relevant, it's hardly transferable to another set of data sets. And in general, you want higher abilities, that is this latent variable that we're considering, and not only selecting the best performing result for a single data set. Of course, if your application is the best performing data set for the MNIST, but you want a best performing tool for the MNIST data set, go ahead and use one of those benchmarks. But if you are looking for an algorithm for your custom application, you might want to be looking at ability and not the result of a single benchmark. And that's it from my side. I hope you enjoyed, and I expect that at least we can see that the choice of the benchmarks actually impact the results and how you use some of those algorithms in practice.
Very good, David. Let me stop recording at this point.